Okay, boys and girls, we went over place value with our opening, with our vocab. Just a reminder that these are a whole one, whole tens, a whole hundreds. Once we hit the decimal, it means we are part of a whole. So a tenth, a hundredth, and a thousandth. Yes, it seems to go backwards compared to the whole, but when we think about it, if I cut something into 10 equal pieces, that I have more than if I cut it into 100 equal pieces, or if I cut it into 1,000 equal pieces. So that's why a tenth of something is more than a hundredth of something, and a hundredth is more than a thousandth. So have your worksheet out, have your pencils today. Quick, go grab a couple different colored pencils would be a good plan. Thousands are smaller parts than hundreds. If 100 is divided into 10 equal parts, each part is 1,000. Use the model at the right to show tens, hundreds, and thousands. Divide the larger square into 10 equal columns or rectangles. So let's do that first. Let's divide it into those 10 equal parts. So divide yours quickly into 10 equal parts. Okay, now that you have it divided into 10 equal parts, now we need to shade one part of it. So I'm going to shade one part. And then it asks you write the part as a decimal and a fraction. So as a decimal, we know we have a decimal point. And then how many of these are shaded, how many tenths of these are shaded? And we have one that is shaded. 1 out of 10, but it's in the tenths place. Or if we're going to write it as a fraction, it's 1/10. We have 1 out of all of these are tenths. Now it wants you to divide your rectangle into 10 equal squares. Use the second color to shade it. Okay, so now we got to go back and we need to divide it the other way into 10 equal parts. So please do that. Okay, now that you got it divided into 10 equal spots, I have now 100 because I know 10 times 10 is 100. So they said shade one in with a different color. So pick a different one and shade it in. Let's go up here. Alright, now they want you to write that as a decimal. If I look at this, I have my decimal. Now, how many tens do I have shaded in? I don't have any, so I have to put a 0 in the tenth spot. How many hundreds do I have shaded in? I have 1 hundredths. So that's what it looks like when I write that. What does it look like as a fraction? 1 shaded in out of 100. So now they want us to move down to as if we were cutting this hundredth spot into 10 equal parts. So they have set up so that we can do that down here. So make 10 equal lines, and that would be in that little square there. They had to make it enlarge. Okay, if we did that to every one of these squares, how many equal parts would we have? I hope you said 1,000 parts. Now, if we shade in one little part of that, which I have shaded in, so please shade in one of yours with a third color. How many parts do we have shaded in? Well, if you look, we have no tens. Whoops. We have no tens. We have, there's my decimal, no tens, no hundreds, but 1,000s. And when you do 1,000s, just draw a straight line in that. If I was doing on here, I would have just drew one straight line like that to cover. I have 1/1000. What does that look like as a fraction? It looks like 1 part out of 1,000. Alright, let's move on to our next page. Explain what each shaded part in your model in the investigation section shows. What fraction? So I want you to go back to your model and I want you to talk to your partner about how that is 1/10, 1/100th, and 1/1000th. All right, now let's move down, that you've done that. So let's move down to the relationship on a graph here. So if I look, the relationship of digits in the different place value positions is the same with decimals as with whole numbers. You can use your understanding of the place value patterns and the place value chart to write decimals that are 10 times as much or 1/10 of a decimal. We did this with whole numbers. We struggled a little bit, so let's see if it's with us. All right, so remember, if you're going 10 times as much, it is going to get, if you're going from the 10th and you want to know what's 10 times as much, you will go to the hundreds, but only it will be so if we got, they want to know how much is 10 times as much as this, we would take it 10 times, so it would be get greater, it would get bigger, so it would be it would just be a 4. 0.4. It's 4/10. That's 10 times greater. Remember how when we multiplied we added a 0? Well, we have, now that we're in the decimals, we are taking a 0 away. If it's 1/10 of this number, it is adding a 0. Oops, sorry, needed a 0. 4 thousandths. So let's look at our place value chart here. So if I have 3 and it's 10 times as much, remember, now it's tricky because we are losing a 0. We're getting bigger because remember, with decimals, it goes backwards. You almost have to think of in reverse. If it's 1/10 of it, it gets smaller, so it has to be 3 thousandths. And this is the number we're working with. Ooh, if we have 1/10 of it, what's 10 times as much? That is 1 whole one. Because we lost the 0 and we put the 1 in that spot. If it was 1/10 of 1, what's 1/10 of 1/10? Well, 1/10 divided by 1/10 is 1/100. If we were doing what is 10 times as much as 7/100ths, it would be 7/10. And if we had 1/10 of 7/100, it would be 7 thousandths. All right, let's move on and let's look at this page. And as we're looking at this page, you need to look at here. If there's a model out here, this is talking about the thousandths place. They just magnified it bigger, so they show you it went into that tiny little square. So if I'm going to look at this and I want to write a decimal to show the shaded parts, well, I can tell you right now I don't have the whole thing shaded, so I'm going to have to start out with a decimal. Now I have to ask myself, how many tenths are completely shaded in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tenths are completely shaded in. So in the tenth spot, I put that a 6. Now I'm going to check my hundredth spot. How many hundredths? I've already took care of the tenths, so now I'm going to do the hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 hundredths are shaded in. Now, there you go, magnified it so I could see it. How many thousandths are shaded in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. This shaded spot is 6/10, 665 tenths. Okay, I would like you to do number 2, 3, and 4 with your partner, and you can come back and check your answers. All right, let's move on to complete the sentence. 6/10 is 10 times as much as So we're going as 10 times as much, so it has to get smaller. Or the number is 6 is 10 times. So we're thinking about this as this number is right now in this spot in our graph. So what if it's right there, if our number is right here, let's just use this little spot because this gets confusing when it says 6/10 is 10 times as much as, so 6/10 is 10 times more than what? Well, it's 10 times more than 6/100 because it's asking you more. All right, let's go to this. 7/1000 is 1/10 of what? Well, once again, it's in this spot, so what would be in this spot if it was 1/10 more? Well, it's kind of the opposite of the first thing we did. It's 7/100. So when they have them written like this, 6/10 is, that means that number is in this square. What would be on this side of the square? And this would be what would be on this side of the square. So we got the same thing here. Please try and do these two with your neighbor and see if you can understand those two quick, and then check your answers, please. Okay, check your answers. I hope you got them correct. Now, I think it's much easier when we have a table. Now we know that 10 times as much just gets smaller. Our number is smaller, so it will be a 2 because we moved our decimal this way. Here, our number gets larger because it's 1/10 of it, only a part of it. Okay, please finish the graph, the table. Okay, you can check your answers. Remember, you're robbing your own self if you are just filling in these answers. Try to understand how the graph works and how it's different from the wording up here. Talk to your partner about that. All right, we're going to skip this page for right now. We might come back to it. Now it's time to do your homework, and in your homework is what I would like you to do is, all right, I would like you to do the homework pages is 155, do numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, and 11. On page 156, do it all.